Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Paul Birkett on the line. Paul, how are you?
Michael, I'm great. Thanks. How about you?
I am awesome. Thank you for being on the show. We're going to have a great conversation today because in the brief pre-show, we talked about the crisis that is going to come and is already starting to show up a little bit with this pandemic, and it's the housing crisis and the mortgage crisis. So before we dive into that too much, why don't you share a little bit of your backstory and the work that you do?
Yeah, so Automation Finance is a crowdfund operation. We buy mortgages where the borrowers have fallen behind on their payments. So we go to a bank and we say, give me the bottom of your book where the guys are not paying. We buy those loans at a big discount, usually around 40% discount. And we then engage with the borrowers and we do what the banks cannot do. In other words, we restructure the mortgages permanently. And the reason we can do it and the banks cannot is that if you go to your bank and restructure your mortgage to maybe extend the term or reduce the interest rate or whatever, you're going to tell all your buddies. And then that bank has a contagion through its whole book of loans where everyone stops paying and the bank goes bankrupt. So what the banks would rather do is sell those loans to someone like us. No one's ever heard of us, really. We're just a bunch of ordinary guys. And so the fact that all of our loans are non-performing, or at least are a little bit late when we buy them, we then take those loans, get them re-performing, and use the monthly payments that the borrowers make to pay our investors, which is how the crowdfund investors get paid. Simple as that.
It's a great format, and it gives people an option where the banks, again, are handcuffed in many ways of what they do, and they want to avoid what transpired back in the Great Recession of 07, 08, 09, where we saw some absolutely tragic situations, and a lot of people, businesses, and everything were really struggling. And now fast forward to 2020. We're in this pandemic, which has, financial ties to it. So many businesses are unable to operate, or they're really restricted. So their revenues are down. So that means everybody that works for them, not only the business owners, but their employees, have had significant reduction in income, which can put them in really deep trouble with their mortgages, because stimulus payments and government assistance only go so far, and it's been a really challenge. So, what do you see potentially happening over the next few months and years when it comes to mortgages and the housing industry and everything else?
Well, so we've seen what's happened just in the last few months. I think the last CoreLogic report on house price inflation said that houses across the US year to date are up 6.4%. Now, who would have ever thought that in the midst of a pandemic with 30 million people or more filing unemployment, that house prices would go up 6%? Most people remember, as you mentioned, 2008, 9, 10, when property prices fell by 15 or 16%, 20 or 30% in some areas, that there's something not adding up. And what's happened has been the government has stepped in, and thankfully they did, to provide forbearance plans for people who've got mortgages. And under those plans, they can miss up to 6 payments. And now with the renewal, they can miss up to 12 payments. The issue will be that 12 months from March, when they stopped paying, which will be next February or March, the assumption is that they have saved 12 times their monthly payment. And we know that they have not done that, because they've spent that money on gas or whatever they've spent it on, but they certainly have not kept it in their bank. And so they'll need to make 12 payments, or in some cases that will be able to be tagged onto the back of the loan. But for many borrowers, millions, 2 to 3 million, we expect, those loans are going to go into delinquency where the forbearance plan cannot save them. And so those loans will flow to someone like us. And we're out raising funds right now to get ahead of that, because the mortgage business happens a month at a time. It's not like, stuff that's being bought and sold all the time. It's each month is one payment. And so we're out now buying loans. We're spending about $1 million a month buying loans right now, and that's building up month after month. In fact, I've just finished a bid for $3.4 million worth of loans. So we could get up to $10 to $12 million a month of capital deployed buying these mortgages. And the reason I think it's interesting is if I said to an investor, hey, I can buy homes for 60 cents on the dollar, everyone would be very interested. Well, we're buying mortgages for 60 cents on the dollar. Now, mortgages have some big advantages because any of your listeners who owns rental property, I used to own rental property myself, there's a lot of work when the toilet doesn't flush and when there's a problem in the yard and when there's a code violation. All of those things come to the landlord. When you're the mortgage owner, those things go to the homeowner. So we don't repair toilets, we don't fix roofs, we don't do any of that stuff. That's all done by the homeowner. So the job we have is to make sure that the homeowner wants to keep their home. And you do that very simply. You make sure that their mortgage payment is 75% of what the rent would be on that home. Because the homeowner needs to leave that home and rent somewhere else or stay there and maintain the house. And it's as simple as that. I'm making it sound maybe a bit more simple than it really is because there's quite a lot of work and legal work and so on. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get the borrower to keep their home and for a payment that they can truly afford. And if they keep the home or they rent it out, we don't really mind so long as they pay us and we pay our investors.
It's a great system too, because again, I love the, not having to fix the toilet analogy, because a client of mine is in, the housing industry, supportive housing and affordable housing. And, so much of their finances go to fixing toilets and dealing with ordinance issues or fences or, all of those things. And in this particular situation, from an investment standpoint, it's similar to just, well, it's not, I don't want to use the comparison necessarily, but in a way it's, like investing in a stock. Well, okay, so you own shares of a stock. That doesn't mean you have to go into that company and do some work and check on them. Well, I mean, there's enough checks and balances that could give you reports on all of that kind of stuff. In this situation, it's, real estate has always been, in my opinion, a more lucrative type of investment than the stock market per se, if you do it right and all the pieces fit into play. But this version of investing in it seems to be even more, I don't want to say hands off, but a lot less concerns than having to be the landlord for a rental property or an apartment building, and you're just spending all your time and effort in fixing all of those things.
Well, I used to be a landlord, so we had about 70 doors. I owned them myself, and I would never want to do that again. It's just too much work. I thought it was passive, and I was doing it on top of my day job, which was a pretty demanding job in a big global company. And so it was just, it was an awful strain. We were running 75, I think we got to 75 doors in total. Now I run 2,500 doors, and I have 6 people. Just to give you an idea of the difference in scale. And it is totally passive. We pay an 8% preferred return. We pay it monthly, so people get checks every month. Some people choose to leave the money in and get interest on the interest, but they get just mailbox money every month. And most landlords are making just around 8% when they really go through all of their costs and all of the stuff that they really allocate to that. So 8% for no work on behalf of the investor, it's a pretty good return.
It's an amazing return compared to what interest rates are right now. And even if you have the most savvy stockbroker, or you're doing stock investments and working in options and all that good stuff, right, an 8% return is amazing. If you're able to do that. But that's a lot of time and effort and constantly monitoring things, where this, and we all know what we're getting in our savings account in our bank right now. We're getting about minus 2%. So it's an amazing opportunity for people to get involved in this. And I mean, that's an amazing rate of return. And again, it's about as hands off as you could be, from my observation. because again, you got 2,500 doors and 6 people. If you had 2,500 doors on the other thing, you would have a few hundred people, to have to manage all of that. And again, you said, the 8% is similar to what landlords end up after all said is and done, but that's not factoring in the time and effort that they have to put in, not only to run a business, if you're hiring staff, dealing with all the W-2s and nuances and scheduling and benefits, and it's like, it's giving me a headache just thinking about that. That's the side of running a business that a lot of people go, I don't like that. So it's amazing that you guys have come up with this. So how did the business come about? What were some, did you see an opportunity? Because you said, crowdsourced and all that, what kind of, launched all of this? I mean, obviously, the crisis with people on mortgages and potentially losing their homes and all that is a big component of it. But where did this idea kind of come from?
So I got to the US in 2010. I'd worked for the Pepsi-Cola company all around the world, basically, for the preceding 18 years. I got here in 2010, and you might remember the real estate market was really on its knees at that time. And I was down in Florida at a meeting, and I saw a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home for $80,000. Now, I'm Irish, so back in Ireland, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home would be $300,000. Just nature of the market is different. I just couldn't believe it. And then I saw that this house would rent for $1,500. It was just, I'm sure I was missing something. So I bought one, and it worked out fine. And I bought another, and I ended up buying almost 70 houses in total, and a multifamily with 16 apartments in it. And I was buying a short sale from a well-known bank, and that short sale became a mortgage note sale. And I just couldn't believe that you can buy a mortgage as an individual person, because only in America, do we have the sophisticated finances that you can do that. Back in Europe, only a bank can have a mortgage. That's it. It's just no way. So I just couldn't believe it and started researching it. And one purchase of one loan became 10, became 50, became 100, became 1,000, became 2,500. We run about $250 million of principal over about 2,500 individual homes. And I started doing it in 2013, and we've made about 16% a year. And with this crowdfund, we basically share that with the investor. They get 8 and we get 8, and we use our 8 to pay the staff and everything else, and the investor gets their 8. And I should just say, if people are interested, they must go to the SEC website and read the prospectus. It's all also on our website, automationfinance.com, because 8%, it's not a guaranteed, federally insured savings certificate. This is a business where we're buying mortgages for 60 cents on the dollar and working with the borrower to work it out. So it's not like a certificate of deposit.
It's like any investment, in the stock market, for example. There's no guarantee that if you buy PepsiCo stock that you're going to, you buy it today and you want to sell it in a month, that you're going to make a profit. Who knows? Right. I mean, there's all kinds of different factors in that, and it's not guaranteed. There's an element of risk, but on the flip side of it, again, I look at it where, and this goes back to, again, on how lean, this entity is. Yeah. 8%, you're able to cover your staffing costs. That's, my original career was public accounting, and I know the cost of staffing as far as running an organization, and it tends to be anywhere from 50 to 60% of your operations is staffing, depending on what type of organization you have. So the fact that you're able to do this with that small percentage and obviously split the other 8% with investors is, again, amazing idea. You saw this opportunity and you went, wow, actually, this makes a ton of sense.
Well, the crowd investors are getting a subsidy in effect, because even if we didn't have the crowd fund, I mean, we're also already running tens of millions of dollars outside of the crowd fund. So the 6, we've got 2 CPAs, 2 attorneys, these they're not inexpensive team members to have on your side. And they do the accounting and they do the reporting and the SEC reporting and all of that stuff across the whole business. So it's not like it's just this fund. We have multiple other funds that we run.
Yeah, but still, it's amazing that this type of exists. And like you said,
Right.
coming from Europe, you're like, what in the world is this?
We've nothing like that.
Oh,
I'm actually in Ireland right now visiting my parents, and there's nothing like, when I talk to people over here, they scratch their head, because in Europe we've got negative interest rates. So a buddy of mine completed the sale of his bakery business a couple of months ago, and he had to pay the bank $10,000 to accept the purchase sum from the buyer of his business. So yeah, getting any kind of return on your money right now, where it's backed by real estate, there's not too many opportunities. And up until the Jobs Act of 2014, which is not that long ago, crowdfunding didn't exist in the US either. This is a pretty new and innovative thing from the SEC to allow us to do what we're doing.
That's an amazing opportunity. So if someone would be interested in wanting to participate in this, what are some of the parameters? Obviously with crowdsourcing you can contribute, but is there a minimum amount? Because I know some people have never done anything before like this. So is there a minimum amount? What's expected? What kind of information do they need to provide and all that?
When we started this, I had no clue who would the investor be, because prior to this, all our money came from Wall Street, very sophisticated investors. And the nature of buying mortgages, you're deploying millions or tens of millions of dollars in one single transaction. That's just the nature of this type of a business. So we said, how can we make this for people just like us? We're just ordinary people helping ordinary people. So the minimum is $250. And we don't get too many people putting in $250, but we do have some. We also have one person who's put in $1 million, and I've only spoken to them on the phone. We've never met. It's amazing. Lots of people in the $10,000 to $50,000. That's kind of where people tend to be doing it, with IRAs or other retirement type vehicles. And it's pretty easy. You go to the website automationfinance.com, read the prospectus, and click on the button. And you've then got to upload some documents to make sure that you are who you say you are. And, we need to do the KYC, know your client, and anti-money laundering, and all of those rules. And once you've done that, you can just send the money in by ACH, by wire, by check. And we send you a statement and a check every month. Or if you want to reinvest the dividends, which is what I recommend people do, by the way, because then you're getting interest on the interest. And that really, over 30 years, that's a really large sum of money. So, all the info's on the website. I'm on LinkedIn. I do a video every month that updates what's going on in the mortgage world, in the real estate world, and I get about 20 to 25,000 views of that. And so people find that interesting too, even if they're not involved in our fund.
That's amazing. And I think it's so people, let's say they put in, we'll say $500 or $1,000, they can go back and add more to it as time goes on. And thank you. And it's one of the big things, for investors and anybody that's even thinking about investing, like in stocks or things like that. Reinvesting the dividends is such an important thing. You look at it, it's like, wow, PepsiCo paid me whatever PepsiCo's dividend currently is. And you go, wow, okay, I'm going to withdraw that and go buy a new iPhone or do this or that, or depending on how much you're invested in. It's like, take that money, because I look at it as like, that is free money. That is money that they just said, hey, you know what? We did really good last year. Here's our dividend of, 7.9% of what you have. And all of a sudden you've got this new money that just was created from the money you already put in. It's like, we'll take that and put it back in. And you just do that. And next thing you know, the power of compound interest and everything like that, it skyrockets. So thank you for reminding people of that thing. So awesome. So just again, as we wrap up, where can people find out more about you and this opportunity? Automationfinance.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn if people want to link in with me, and my number's on there. Call me if you want to discuss it. And we're open right now. We'll be keeping the fund open until the end of the year, and we'll be buying as many mortgages as we can. Our target is to produce 8% per month and make distributions monthly. And but remember, there's no guarantees. That's awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So Paul, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for this work, because not only are you creating opportunities for investors to make money on their investments, but you're also giving homeowners an opportunity to stay in their home and refinance in a way that makes it easier for them so they don't lose their homes, which has such a negative ripple effect on everything else in society. So thank you and everybody involved with this endeavor. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.